Good evening, everyone. Ten weeks, battles, sprawls, pure racing has happened across the globe with ACC Race Nation. The drivers have been battling the elements, battling each other, and fighting for overall glory. But tonight sees us at the finale of the past 10 weeks. We're going to have a wet and wild race here at Mount Panorama in Bathurst for the final race of Season 10 here on Assetto Corsa Competizione. I'm Jack Millington, your commentator for tonight's action around what is a very sodden circuit here in New South Wales in Australia. Well, the drivers are already out and about on the track at the moment. We've got 6 minutes and 45 seconds left of qualifying. Let's have a look at the provisional standings currently. We've got the alien at the front. It's Massimo Benedetti. He is leading the way by 1.7 seconds from Season 8 champion Steve Hall in second place. Our championship leader, who has a hand on the crown, he is in third place. Danny Zoutenbayer getting thwarted by Jacob Byford-Rue in front of him. In fourth, we've got Michael van der Wal. Fifth place, Ross Harris. Sixth, Tony Manley, with John Wells, Neil Wright in a brand new, I'm going to call that the Brazilian livery that he's running tonight. Jeffrey Van Buren is in ninth place. Jacob Byford-Rue, who we've just seen running inside the top 10. Dennis Penders, the only driver who could take away mathematically the crown from Danny Zoutenbayer tonight. He's going to need a lot of luck to do it, and he's just gone up to 10th place. Danny Felix in the M4 is 12th. Rich Jarram, the only Mustang in the field, in 13th. Joe Warner is in 14th. We've got Sebastian Berger back in for tonight. See how the Porsche 992 driver gets on. In fact, we'll follow him around for a lap in just a moment. And Davey Zoutenbayer in the pits with less than a quarter of the qualifying session remaining. Let's get out there on circuit. Let's get on board with Sebastian Berger. Hopefully the race director will move us along quite nicely to get to him. There he is. And we'll ride on board with him. It's not going to be an easy race tonight for the drivers. 2 hours ahead for the final race of the championship for Season 10. But Sebastian Berger, he's been competitive this season. He's won a couple of races. Let's see how he navigates this fabulous 3.8 mile circuit. Here we go then. Onto a lap in the Porsche. Rain splattering down on our windscreen as he brakes tentatively into turn one. Looks a little bit wide at Hell Corner. No issue with the exit. He'll have lost a couple of temps though, I'm sure, as a result of braking a little bit deep. Running then all the way up towards turn 2 at Griffin's Bend. Over the rise here, the car almost getting a little bit of air. Up to 6th gear, 153 miles an hour as he brakes for Griffin's. 3rd gear, got to try and avoid the curb, it can spit you round. Well, that's nicely done. Then we come through turns 3 and 4, the cutting. Difficult braking zone and blind turn 4. But again, it's nice and neat. A quick flick of the right for turn 5 and into quarry at turn 6. 4th gear, little bit of understeer being carried in that Porsche, but not a problem at the minute. 7 and 8, a little bit of a lift for him as he runs over Frog Hollow. Then into Sullivan and McPhillamy Park at turn 10. Nicely done. Now the tricky part of the circuit, into the dipper sequence. Got to try and nail the car over the curbs where possible, not take too much steering lock through here, and you can see Berger being very, very cautious. Has to be careful into the right-hander at 17 before braking into Forest Elbow. Nice and tight though this lap from the Porsche man. A quick left into the kink at 19, it's down the Conrod straight. We've got the Ferrari of Jeffrey Van Buren just up the road, but he's not going to impede on this lap, I don't feel. As they approach the chase now, 170 mile an hour for the Porsche. Is he committed into the right-hander? Yes, he is. Down through the gears. Second it is for the left-hander at 21. 22's nice and neat as well. He's just got to get one corner right here, the final one of the circuit. Turn 23 at Murray's. Goes down to second gear, braked a little bit earlier just to make sure that he made the corner. That was a tidy enough lap from Sebastian Berger. That puts him fourth at the moment on the second row of the grid. There's clearly more time to find, and there's one part of it there. Look at the green delta that he's got in the top left corner of your screen, ladies and gentlemen. He's 3 tenths up as a result of just getting that apex correct. So that is a nice start to the lap for Sebastian Berger. But we are live and racing here, and I'm really excited for tonight. Hello to everyone. Live and racing here. Apologies if you can hear the drop back on my microphone then, but it's all good, it's all sorted. I can't see anybody getting near Massimo Benedetti's time because our championship leader is 1.3 seconds behind Massimo Benedetti, who is he's already got an infamous legacy within ACC Race Nation just because of how fast he is. You know, he's come into the championship relatively unknown to most people and is absolutely flying. In terms of how quick he has been flying, for those that are unaware about the McLaren driver, the Dutchman has won the last 2 races. And apart from at round number 8, where he was challenged by Berger, you know, last week when we were at Snetterton, he was absolutely in a field of his own. He was in a class of 1 as he goes past Michael van der Waal. We're not far away from the finish of qualifying. Benedetti's going to round the final corner. He's just about going to have enough time for another lap. And he goes even faster. So Benedetti, the Dutchman, does a 2-minute 5.9. Can anyone get close to that? Steve Hall will be the next driver to come across the start-finish line. He does improve. Gets himself in front of Berger. That's a good effort, that, from Steve. Clearly his new setup changes have certainly brought about a bit more competitiveness from the Season 8 champion. Byford Rue in the Porsche. He's got a new livery on for tonight's action as well. Sort of in a green grey, a dark grey gold livery going on there. Oh, big slide in the Porsche there. In the number 21, and another stepping out moment for the driver in the number 21 Porsche. But he's got 2 corners that he's navigated. One left that he's just gone round. That's a nice lap. That puts him inside the top 10. That's a great effort. So Byford Rue puts himself into outside of last week's diminished grid. Definitely the best qualifying of the season, the most competitive we've seen. Now the Porsche looks quite interesting around this circuit. It looks like there's a good mixture of oversteer and understeer on offer. We've seen it with Byford Rouge's car, but we saw it also with Berger's lap that he did earlier. Still looks just a little bit unsettled at times. One final corner to go into Murray's at turn 23. Is Berger going to make an improvement on this lap? No. He stays on the second row of the grid. So our championship leader, Danny Zoutenbayer, has got himself firmly in the mix. Realistically, he only needs to finish tonight to secure the championship. Benedetti doesn't improve, but let's go through our 16 drivers for tonight on the grid. So the Dutchman Massimo Benedetti takes first place for qualifying once again. Danny Zoutenbayer is second. On row 2, we've got Steve Hall and Sebastian Berger with Michael van der Waal and Jeffrey Van Buren, a Dutch row 3. Ross Harris and Tony Manley are in row 4 with Jacob Byford-Rue and John Wells rounding out the top 10. Neil Wright and Dennis Penders are on row 6 with Danny Felix and Rich Jarram, row 7. Joe Warner qualifies in 15th place, and Davy Zoutenbayer, good evening to Davy and his wife, they are not setting a lap time for qualifying. I think Davy electing to start from the back of the grid. So we'll just give ourselves a little moment to recalibrate. If you are watching today, thank you very much. If you could, comment below, see what you make of the action. We've got 2 hours in front of us. It'd be good for a couple of people to keep me company. I've got myself all set up, ready for the action tonight. I've got myself a nice cup of tea. Which will last about 5 minutes, I reckon, whilst the action is going on. I've also got a nice cold drink of water to go alongside it, because it's important, ladies and gentlemen, to stay hydrated.
Alright, we have some wet conditions. Watch out for curbs and exit, and remember to brake early.
So we've got ourselves almost 60 seconds before the race is about to go live here for the formation lap, and 8 rows being utilised for today's action. Of course, obviously a lot of drivers have been itching with excitement for the release of ACC's, I was going to say predecessor, but that's beforehand. Successor in the form of AC Evo, effectively, of what it's going to be called. There we go. We've got the drive button has come up, so we can select one of the drivers. Wet conditions ahead, just if you didn't know, if you were blind. We do have wet conditions for tonight's race. But also, of course, it's been quite exciting times, because the spiritual successor to the Project Cars series, Project Motor Racing, has also unveiled its latest career trailer yesterday. It does look fascinating. Whether the drivers within ACC will take it up is another matter, but it is a nice addition to the sim racing titles. We have been lacking for a few in recent times. The drivers are off the grid and underway. They won't be thinking about Project Motor Racing, they'll be thinking about Project Now. Joe's decided to go back into his purple and pink livery that he likes to run from time to time for a special 2 hour. I think a couple of drivers have got a few liveries on. Ross Harris always runs that blue, gold and white Lamborghini livery. I think it is quite an iconic look of his, actually. Rich Jarram's got a new livery on for the finale. Clearly a change of sponsorship going on there. Looks like he's running a Shell Oils car. I said before, Byford Rue is another driver who is running a adjusted livery, obviously for commercial reasons. You can see here he comes in the, I'm going to say that's a chrome green, grey and yellow. Reminds me a little bit of Ayrton Senna's helmet in that sense. I mean, Neil Wright's does look a little bit more like that. If we look at Neil Wright's, you can see there's more yellow and green. They're quite similar, those two, with their respective designs. It's almost like the inverse of one another, if you know what I mean. But the 55 going for a different livery for tonight's 2 hour race. This is going to be a challenge for the drivers. It's raining, it's Bathurst, there's not much room for error. When we last raced around Bathurst a couple of seasons ago, back in season 8, it was Jordan Harden who got a podium in second place that day, and he was by no means the quickest driver on the circuit. He will tell you as much himself when he got the podium. So I'm thinking there could be some surprise results today. I think in terms of a race winner, it's going to be very hard pressed for people to beat Benedetti, but we haven't seen the Dutchman make a mistake yet. I'm not saying he will do. Don't want him to either, to be honest. I'd like to see everyone get through with no issues, but I have to be realistic. This is not an easy task for the drivers. 1 hour racing around here is challenging. 2 hours is doubly so. And 24 hours, if you're part of the Bathurst 1000, is especially tough. The driver's just coming through the dipper in the background. They're going around Forest Elbow at this point of the circuit. And John Wells there in the M4. He's had a much better season as John in the BMW. It's made a massive difference for him. You can see Byford Rue in front of him really sliding the car, clearly getting those tyres up to temperature, but he doesn't want to heat them up too much. The wet compound tyres don't like being too hot. The blocks move a little bit too much. They become a little bit gelatinous rather, I should say. And that moves the blocks around a little bit too much. So Byford Rue's got to be careful. He just doesn't overheat the tyres. But we aren't far away from the start-finish line, coming into the chase at what will be the slowest speed anyone will do this evening. Outside of driving in the pit lane, there's Danny Felix. Tony Manley in the aqua blue M4. He's also had another good campaign changing cars. He went from the AMR V8 last season to the M4. That's made a big difference to him. But the driver's starting to line up now, 2 by 2. Ooh, as Ross Harris drives through Byford Rue. Of course, there is ghosting on for those that are new to the series and new to Assetto Corsa Competizione. In the formation lap, the settings are on ghosted so that we don't have any incidents. But we've got on board with Steve Hall here. That's the driver I've decided to select from the second row of the grid. We are about to go racing for the final time here in Season 10 with ACC Race Nation. Just moments away, and the race is live from Bathurst. It's a cracking start for Benedetti. Zoutenbayer tries to close the inside line. We've got Hall moving to the inside. More just a case of defending, but it looks relatively clean, apart from Berger going off the road. He's going to drop down to 6th place, maybe even 7th, behind Ross Harris. But relatively pedestrian start from the drivers, which is to be expected in these conditions, as Michael van der Waal gets past Jeffrey Van Buren. That's a move into turn 3 at the cutting, or rather at quarry I should say, but Benedetti leads the way. I'm just trying to get a few different angles It's very different because the race director is a little bit all over the shop here. That's wide from the Dutchman up ahead. That's Van der Waal running wide, and it's kind of put into a Constantina effect. You can see a little bit of spray impacting the driver's visibility, so that's going to play a big difference to the correct lines they need to be taking. Byford Rue on the inside of there at the left-hander at McPhillamy Park. I'm very brave to even think about looking up there, but he's got up a spot. Van der Waal goes wide, and that's going to be Van Buren through. Is that a little bit of contact? Yes, they've both made contact. Van Buren is spinning round into the dipper. Is he still there? Oh, I think he's made contact with John Wells. I don't know if he tried to get restarted, but sadly for Van Buren, that little bit of contact with himself and Van der Waal as they bumped wheels has sent him round. I don't think he hit the wall too hard, but that's compromised his race start. And yeah, sadly John Wells did catch him out, so the M4 is already on the back foot. It's a long race as it is. Byford Rue under pressure from Tony Manley. Now this is brave, and sure enough, Byford Rue deciding he wants to keep the car on the road. Does so indeed. But Manley goes very deep at the left-hander. Oh, you can see the wheel soaring away. And into the pits comes Byford Rue. So has he got damage, I wonder? I wonder if that's why he's pitted. But at the start of this race, a few incidents already. But it's Benedetti who leads the way. He's got a lovely gap at the front to Danny Zoutenbayer. Then it's Steve Hall. Michael van der Waal, after that little moment, is still in 4th place, but he's got Sebastian Berger right with him. Ross Harris running inside the top 6. Then it's Tony Manley, it's Neil Wright, it's Danny Felix inside the top 10, and there's John Wells into the pits, sadly. Dennis Penders inside the top 10, with Davies out by up from 16th to 11th, so good start for the number 18. Rich Jarram is just behind Davies Alsabai. You can see him on the screen as he comes through the left-hander at the cutting. Then it's Joe Warner, and we've got Byford Rue and John Wells in the pits. I think I'm right in saying we've also got Jeffrey Van Buren, so his damage was sadly too much for him, so he's got that fixed. And out of the pits goes Byford Rue, so his damage wasn't as bad as expected. Whatever happened to Byford Rue, we'll have to find out. What I'm going to do, everybody, is I'm going to follow from a sort of interior camera, probably right on board with the drivers, because the race direction is not the best in terms of the external cameras because of where they're placed. Clearly they've got the junior team on that. But at the moment, Massimo Benedetti at the front and absolutely flying. He's gone and up the road. Steve Hall putting pressure onto the back of Danny Zoutenbayer. But speaking of proper pressure, that's Sebastian Berger, the German, trying to find a way past the McLaren in front of him. A little bit wide from the McLaren, the number 71 in front of us, but he's going to be fine with that. But he's having to defend into Murray's. Will Berger look to find a way past on the exit of turn 23? Not quite close enough, I don't think. Well, the German hasn't been off the podium in all the races he's competed in this season. Right now, he's not on there, but he looks more confident than the Dutchman in front. Let's just go back to the external shot. You can see it's not really giving us much action. Here comes the green Porsche then to the inside line at turn 3. He's going to be on the inside. He brakes a little bit later, and he runs a bit deep, and Van der Waal followed his line. He was a bit fortunate there, Berger, with that. He was very fortunate to get away with that, but Van der Waal gets overtaken, drops down into 5th place. There is our race leader. Joe Warner still running around, which is good. Let's hope he continues on. Joe continuing to improve week upon week. Ross Harris running in 6th place. I don't want to say anything about Ross. Danny Felix was very wide then in the background at turn 7, and I think he touched the wall because Penders is right with him. Dennis Penders in the Ferrari, the only other driver who can compete for the championship. It's going to look to the outside going into the dipper sequence, but I would have been surprised. I was going to say I would have been surprised if he was looking at an overtake there. We'll ride on board with Tony Manley. He's got the best view of all this as they go into Forest Elbow for the second lap. On the lap counter, it should be said that it's the third lap of the race, but not to worry. Davies Outenbayer absolutely flying. He started in 16th, he's up to 10th. Great start to this race for him. You'd think that the camo would then pan left. It did. Well, the race director's got it working. That's fantastic. We could see the drivers going through the chase at the camera housing point there. That's great to see. You can see the spray just being kicked up by the Ferrari in front of us. Danny Felix running wide at Murray's. These guys all setting similar lap times, but I would assume that that's because they're stuck behind Felix, who runs wide again at turn 1. I noticed a few times this season that Felix has struggled with late braking into tight corners. It's something that he struggled with a few races back at Misano. And Penders is looking to the inside line, but I don't think he's going to be close enough into turn number 2. At Quarry Bend. And Manley just sitting patient for now. There's nothing to be gained in these opening 8 minutes for a driver to try and throw a do or die move up the inside, because you'll end up on the other side of the circuit in the pits. But I think Penders is rushing to get on with this. Let's see if we can get on board with Penders. Yeah, there we go. The 985 slap bang in front of our driver's eye view. And go on to the helmet cam. Ooh, that BMW just taking a slightly different line over the S's then into the dipper. I'm noticing that Penders has got a very solid approach to the S's and the dipper there. He tends to take a much lower gear. That's very wide. And I think what the drivers have to be careful of now at this point in the race is they have to build their own confidence. They have to make their own lines. And I think they're still in the phase of they're following other drivers. And we're seeing a few people running wide and the driver behind following the same line. I think Joe Warner has lost it in the S's. Hopefully it's not too much damage and he can carry on again. These guys are catching Ross Harris though. Ross Harris is only just a second, 2 seconds tops in front of the drivers we're on board with. There is the Lamborghini going through the left hand. That's a little bit deep from Penders, and that might promote an opportunity for Manley. Race director doing a cracking job of finding the cars that we're after there. Let's have a look at it from Felix's perspective. He's just got a queue of cars behind him at this point because Davies Outenbayer is not far away now from this queue. But this is the element of the difficulty that the drivers have with having a BMW in front of you, is that the M4 is quite a fast car in a straight line. And I've said this a number of times this season, the Ferrari, whilst exceptionally quick, it doesn't have the best straight line of the GT3 category. And if drivers are relatively equally matched, it makes it much more challenging for the car behind, if it's the Ferrari, to overtake. M4 looking... Whoa. Very precarious. Oh, there we go. There's the mistake. And oh, Penders, though, decides to throw it up the inside, and I think Felix saw it coming. That was the mistake that Penders had been looking for. I was about to say, the M4 looked just a little bit circumspect, under braking for the S's. And the Belgian is through. Now he begins his charge after Ross Harris. See what the Belgian can do now that he's in clear air. But Felix is really, like I said before, the M4 is just closing the gap down on the straights. Oh, he's going to try and look to the inside. Oh, and Felix gets it all wrong and fires Penders off the road. Manley goes through, and I think Zoutenbayer is going to go through. That was a big impact for the only other championship protagonist left in the proceedings, because Mark Chapman is sadly out tonight. I don't mean he's out on a night out, I mean he's not in the race. I think Penders will be frustrated at that. He just got past Felix, who's booted him off the road. I know that Felix has gone backwards, but that was a sizable impact for the Ferrari as Rich Jarram runs wide at turn 1. There's Michael van der Waal running inside the top 5. There's our race leader, 12 seconds ahead of our championship leader, who is being competitively stalked by Steve Hall in these opening laps. Sebastian Berger in 4th place. Is this the race where Berger doesn't finish in the top 3? Or even the top 2, I should say. Lowest he's finished all season is 2nd place in the 4 races that he has done. Van der Waal is there in 5th position. Ross Harris is there in 6th. Manley is in 7th. Davy Zoutenbayer just clipped the wall going into Forest's elbow. Dennis Penders is in 9th, and support for Dennis in the chat there with Just Damon B. I'm going to say Just Damon B. It could be Just Damon B, but I'm going to say Damon. Damon's supporting you. Neil Wright's in 10th place. The more I look at Neil Wright's livery, the more I like it, actually. I know he's run that silver and blue livery for ever since I've started commentating on ACC Race Nation, but that's a really nice colour scheme he's got going on there. He has had a run-in with the barrier, though. I think he's just scraped up against the wall. It looks like the left side skirt, we can't see it from this angle, the left side skirt looks like he's got a bit of damage, but should be minimal. Might get a look at it now as he goes past the camera gantry. Yeah, you can just see it there on the side. There's Danny Felix in 11th. Then Rich Jarram has come into the pits. Now, I would describe this as an exceptionally early pit stop. I wonder if Jarram's been in the wars. Looks like there's a few scrapes and scratches on that Mustang. Certainly not looking like it's showroom ready. John Wells is in the pits as well, and he's been there for a while. And Damon saying Dennis is the GOAT, and you said it right. Oh, well, thank you very much. Well, the GOAT, from your perspective, is in 9th place. And he's going to have to work hard to try and get past Davy Zoutenbayer and Tony Manley. And this is a tough circuit to overtake on. Oh, Manley's in the wall. In the wall. At the left-hander. Between McPhillamy Park and Frog Hollow. That, yeah, you can just see he's got, again, we're into the first 15 minutes of this race, and drivers will now be trying to settle into a rhythm and operating as best as they can, but this is not easy. Oh, and Davy Zoutenbayer really on the back there. Let me just see if we can skip along to the camera angle, please. Can we get the one that we're after? Thank you very much. Look at that. Look how menacing that looks in the screen to your right hand side. You've got the two Ferraris trying to find a way past, but I said it earlier, that M4 is going to be really challenging to overtake. That's a big snap of oversteer for Penders. He's going to cut across the grass. Thankfully, he's made a mistake at the one part of the circuit where there's runoff, and he gets away with it. He's under pressure from Neil Wright. I think he'll just about hold the position into the final corner. Massive snap of oversteer for Penders. He got lucky there. I have to say, just putting a wheel on the grass in this wet weather, GT3 cars are certainly not lawnmowers. They won't cut into the surface, they'll slide over the top of it. That's put Neil Wright straight onto the back of the rear spoiler on that 296 GT3 car. Of course, running the British GT banner across the front. Of course, we had a British round of the GT3 Championship included in this season's action last week at Snetterton, where Massimo Benedetti won by the best part of a minute in that event. At the moment, Benedetti is 16 seconds clear of Danny Zoutenbayer. The front five are a little bit stretched out. I mean, Steve Hall is still shadowing Zoutenbayer by roughly 2.5 to 3 seconds, but everybody else there is shuffled out. You see Benedetti doing 2-minute 7s. Compare that to Michael van der Waal, who's doing 2-minute 10s. Just shows you the Dutchman in first place, not the Dutchman in fifth, is on a mission this evening. Joe Warner still running. He's in 13th place. 2-minute 15 from Joe Warner. That means his best lap is 8 seconds off the pace of Benedetti, but 5 seconds off Michael van der Waal. And that's another step forward for Joe, especially around a challenging track like this. And he wasn't looking forward to wet weather either. Now, back in the fight for the last spot inside the top 6. These guys are spread out just a little, but there's a yellow flag. I'm going to say that that's just a pit lane glitch issue. Yeah, it's green again now. It did say that John Wells was stopped, but John Wells has been stopped in the pits for quite a while. I was about to say, these 5 all within camera shot from 6th down to 10th. I think this is where the main source of action is going to be in the next 20 minutes of this epic race that we've got ahead of us. And Manley is really showing some speed tonight. Really impressed with the Italian. I've been impressed with... Oh, Ross Harris has gone round. He's lost it. Wow, I look away for just one... Oh, and Neil Wright's hit him. And there's a... Oh, Danny Felix has been caught up. There's a bit of... That... What is... I don't really know what Ross Harris has done there, but he's kind of impeded Neil Wright for the wrong reasons. And sadly for Ross Harris, he's lost the back end at the cutting. And he's dropped down to 11th place. So... might be a bit of damage on that car too. Well, I was about to say that that's where all the action's going to be. Well, I did say it. But I was talking briefly about the Italian Tony Manley, who I've been impressed with this championship, this season especially. He's got more and more competitive. And when I first watched him back in the final round at season 8 in Spa, he was distinctly one of the... And I don't mean this in a negative way, but he was one of the drivers who was not at the front of the field. But he's clearly improved as the championship has gone on. And I think we're starting to get a few mistakes popping up from drivers. Michael van der Waal has gone off the road ahead of us. I'm just interrupting my own point there, because... And Dennis Penders is off. Dennis Penders has lost it at the exit of turn 22. Got Danzo just here. Okay, Danny Felix, but it's twice now we've seen Penders go off the road. Although technically we didn't see that one. Again, it doesn't look like he's got any major damage, I don't think. But these conditions are starting to catch drivers out. And eventually I will be able to make my point about Tony Manley. In that I have been mightily impressed with him this season. and he has made huge strides forward. I certainly... Oh, Van Buren just... Apologies, not Van Buren. Zoutenbayer just behind, running into the wall at the cutting. Make sure he doesn't do that again. Right, I'm going to make my point about Manley now. That's what I'm going to try and say. There's so many things happening around us. But the Italian this season has just continually improved. He's been in the top 5 ever since we were at round 4. And he's just getting better and better. And I think the change of car has certainly helped him. I think the M4 is much more suited to his driving style than what the AMR V8 was last season. But it's really nice to see the Italian making these steps forward. He's in a proper fight for 6th place. Van der Waal is only just a few seconds ahead now. After his little spin that he had. Just looking... He's nudged the wall, actually, as Van der Waal. He's nudged Van der Waal in 5th place. Berger's there in 4th. I have to say, Berger now has got a move on. And that's not because Zoutenbayer or Steve Hall have been driving slowly. I think he's just improved his pace. I think his speed's accelerating. He's getting quicker and quicker as the race goes on. Rich Jaron back in the pits with damage. Zoutenbayer did the 2-minute 9.2. Hall did a 2-minute 9.9. Eventually, when we get to Berger, 2-minute 8.6. So Berger has stepped up to the challenge and really is pushing the limits of the 992. Neil Wright is into the pit lane. So damage clearly for the number 55. Manley still has Zoutenbayer, Davey that is, behind him. He's right on board with the Ferrari. Coming into McPhillamy Park. Down through the gears. The Ferrari has seen the back of the BMW for the last 10 minutes at least. They've left what was a quintet, 5 cars in one shot about 10 minutes ago, is now just a duo. You can see Zoutenbayer just has a lot more confidence in the Ferrari 296 compared to the M4, but the problem is that you can't really overtake in the middle part of the circuit. He's up to 172 miles an hour. He moves to the inside. That's not going to be a realistic look at overtaking the driver in front of us. And to make a note as well that Sebastian Berger has closed the gap right up to 3rd place. Oh, that's wide from Manley, but I don't think Zoutenbayer is close enough. He might be able to prove me wrong. He's in the wheel tracks of the M4 in front of us, but you can see the M4 just edging away. It's going to have to take a bigger mistake from the BMW for the Ferrari to get past. That's another little error from the Italian. It's going to be on the outside as Davey. I don't think this is going to be an overtaking manoeuvre into the cutting, and it isn't. But this is what Davey has to keep doing if he wants to catch Michael van der Waal, who is only 6 and a bit seconds up the road. If he wants to do that challenge, he's got to get past Manley, but he's going to have to wait for a little mistake, I think. Over at McPhillamy Park they go for the next time of asking. Down through the gears into first again. A lot of drivers taking first gear through the S's. This might be the chance. Manley runs deep again, but he's just got that little bit extra grunt that can keep him ahead of the M4, but he's so close to the back of the BMW with Zoutenbayer. Can he go close enough at the chase? Manley's defending the inside line. Is he going to be able to be brave enough? He's got the car to the inside, but the M4 remains in front. Oh, how close do you want to get to the back of that M4 assembly? They're both really pushing. They're both really pushing each other, I have to say. This is excellent racing. To the inside line. He is going to brake a little bit later for Zoutenbayer. That's the move we've been looking for quite some time. He goes through, but now he's going to have to really defend hard from Manley. He's got to try and keep the M4 behind, but look at the straight line speed of that M4. That's the challenge he's got to try and contend with. Over the crest of the brow they go, down the main straight. Can Zoutenbayer brake a little bit later? He's going to have to if he wants to make this move complete. He does move into 6th place. It's been a long time coming, but Davy Zoutenbayer has finally got himself some clear track ahead. And off he goes into the distance. Look at that. He's already pulled 9/10 of a second on the M4 driver. So a lot of speed in that Ferrari. And let's see if he can get back to his best lap time, which was a 2:10. Whoa, wow, that was brave. On the exit of turn 8 and 9 there. Zoutenbayer now pushing the... And one thing that Zoutenbayer has to make sure he does now is not do what Penders did earlier on. When he got past, it's just a case of just needs to stay switched on for this lap. Get into a rhythm, get back into the groove, because you've been driving at another driver's pace for the last few laps, and then you can start pushing again. Looks like he is doing. Okay, let's go forward. Joe Warner has found... Well, he's gone very far off the road with Joe Warner. Then he managed to find the play pit. But he digs himself out of it thanks to the wet weather. Which Jaram is still circulating in the Mustang in 13th position. As we approach the first quarter of the race so far. Still an hour and a half to go, of course. Byford Rue just outside the top 10. Don't forget Byford Rue was in the pits earlier with damage. He's passed Neil Wright, who's also had to pit, of course, with his contact with Ross Harris, who is in 10th place at the moment. But this is the battle that I wanted to just touch upon, because we've now got Porsche on Ferrari action. And Sebastian Berger, I did say, was closing up the gap to Steve Hall, and that gap is now less than a second. I think for Berger, he's just been feeling out the conditions. And I think the German at the moment, he's just getting himself into a position where he can look to start attacking the third place driver in front of us. I don't think he's going to be able to overtake down the Conrad straight. He's a bit too far back at the moment. It will be fascinating to see how quickly Porsche is in comparison to the Ferrari, though. That is something I'm quite excited to see in terms of straight line speed fighting. As we break into Murray's for the 13th time of asking. Looks like we're on for a 52 plus lap race. Whoa, Zoutenbayer! Zoutenbayer's in the wall! The championship leaders put it into the barrier on the exit of turn 1. I just saw the yellow Ferrari into the wall. He's got going. Let me just go back to him. He's planted the wall. It was a big impact. He's fortunate that he's nearly 30 seconds clear of Michael van der Waal, so he's lost 2 places to Hall and Berger, but see if we can get on board with the Ferrari. Let's just have a look at the car as we go through the cutting. In fact, we get a driver's eye view, that'd be a bit better. Yeah, that's quite big damage. Look, the Zoutenbayer is having to tilt the wheel to keep the car pointing in a straight line. It's not turning properly, actually. Oh, don't have another accident, Zout. That's the last thing you want to do. That car is limping back to the pit lane. So drama for the championship leader. Providing he gets the car back with no further problems, he should be okay for the championship fight. But this is the first time that I've seen Danny Zoutenbayer make a mistake. And it must be because it's the last race of the season. He's got one hand on the championship crown. And it must be just sat in the back of his mind, potentially. Maybe he was cruising at the front and it was going well for him, and he's just had a moment. And off the car went into the barrier. Yeah, he's still able to do 160. You can see Michael van der Waal's just come round the left-hander at turn 19. That's how much time Zout's lost. He's going to go off the road. He's going to become a combine harvester. Other Italian combine harvesters are available, including Lamborghinis. But Zoutenbayer is into the pit, so the team can have a look at the damage that has been sustained with that. But I imagine for the Dayglow Yellow Ferrari, he is going to be outside of the top 10 when he emerges from the pit lane. But drama then on lap 15. Championship leader is in the pits, so that pushes Michael van der Waal up into 5th place. Davy Zoutenbayer's in 6th. Dennis Penders is in 7th place. So the only other championship rival that Zoutenbayer has is going to be overtaken by Penders, who moves up into 6th place. But as I said before, Penders, realistically, to take the championship, Penders needs to win the race and get driver of the day, with Zoutenbayer not finishing at all. That's a tall order, considering that Penders for a start is in 6th place and currently 23 seconds behind Michael van der Waal. It's not impossible, of course. It is looking improbable at the moment, but again, his chances are not zero. And a lot of people will do the national lottery for odds worse than his right now. So who says Penders cannot win the championship? We'll find out. He is on for 2nd though at the moment. He's going to overtake Mark Chapman in the championship standings. And to be honest with you, I'm going to just have a little bit of a focus on Penders whilst we're here, because he's a driver who has been in every single race this season. And I think with the way that the championship has played out, you know, he's only had one result outside of the top 10 as Penders. You know, he's had a number of 5th places, he's had a number of 6th places, he's in 6th at the moment. And yeah, okay, he hasn't had an accident as of yet. He's had a few slides off the road, but I did say earlier on at the start of this race, drivers are going to make mistakes, and when they do, it'll come down to those who are being extra consistent. And if they can manage to do that, they'll get a good result. Someone has gone round at the cutting, and that's a curious place. It's Tony Manley, and he's back in the pits. Wow. Tony Manley. Oh, Zoutenbayer in the wall again. Pushing hard. I was just trying to see, was it Sebastian Berger has got past? Yeah, so what I was looking at, and for the momentary pause that I had, Tony Manley, I think, had gone round, and Steve Hall has hit him. So Steve Hall's miserable luck continues. Because every time this season that Steve Hall has been in an incident, it's been from a lapped marker spinning. It has been quite unfortunate for him. And I think what's happened is that Steve Hall's hit the back of the car, got damage, and Sebastian Berger's been a little bit further back, managed to avoid it, and slips through into second place. Now, if that damage is bad enough... Oh, it is bad enough, because Steve just went off the road. So I think the Ferrari's coming into the pits, which would mean that despite having his struggles earlier on in this race, Michael van der Waal will be moving himself into the third place position. He's not ever had a podium. He came close last week when he finished fourth at Snetterton. But he's another driver this season who has continued to impress. Still a long way to go, of course, but he would be sat in a podium placing, but that would require Steve Hall to pit, which he hasn't done. So the gap between them is 5.5 seconds to Sebastian Berger ahead of us in second place. So now Benedetti and Berger resume their positions like they have done when they've competed in the races this season. Now van der Waal was a good few seconds behind. I want to see the time gap as he crosses the line. 22 seconds. So he's closed up by a second on that lap since that incident. Oh, van der Waal gets it wrong, so I give a little bit of praise, and van der Waal nearly loses it in the same place that Danny Zoutenbayer did. So Davy Zoutenbayer will be thinking to himself, there's even a possibility for me sneaking into the podium places here, because Davy's another driver who hasn't had a podium this season, but in a 2-hour race around Bathurst, it can always happen. Penders hasn't had a podium either. Danny Felix hasn't had a podium. Danny Felix, considering that he joined the championship partway through, you know, he's had one top 10 finish in the 3 races that he's done so far. And despite the issue that he had earlier on, when he ran right through the back of the other car, he's in 7th place. Ross Harris is still carrying on in 8th position despite his awkward travails earlier on. Zoutenbayer is 9th, but he's on the other side of the circuit. But of course, Harris still has to pit. Neil Wright has pitted. Everybody below these drivers has pitted already. We have had 2 retirements. John Wells sadly being one of them. John pulled into the pits quite early on, actually. And I can now explain. So, as Byford Rue oh, that's Joe Warner. That was nicely parked from the Joker car there. But I can now explain why Byford Rue was in the pits at the start. Now, I said he had damage, but the actual reason was that he was on dry tyres. So that's why Byford Rue has lost a lot of time, and he's having to make now another pit stop. So that was unfortunate for him. Not only has John Wells gone out, and John was saying that someone lost it on lap 1, which was Jeffrey Van Buren, came back across the track, I had to pit for repairs, and it totally changed the handling of my car to the point it's undrivable, and he's had enough. So John Wells sadly retiring, and the other driver who retired was Jeffrey Van Buren. That's a... Whoa! As Joe Warner finds the barrier on the exit of the chase and back into the pits goes the Joker. I don't think the Joker lap was that way, Joe, but good luck finding it. Zoutenbayer now only 3 seconds behind Michael van der Waal, who is closing the gap to Steve Hall, but I think Steve Hall's damage isn't as bad as we first feared. It's certainly not helped him in the fight with Sebastian Berger because he's 12 seconds behind, but in context with van der Waal, it's enough to just keep him plugging along. He'll need to get it. I think he'll get it fixed though at the pit stops. And I think for Steve, what would be the big benefit for Season 8 champion is that he's 4th in the driver's standings at the moment. He's had 2 podiums this season, one at round 1 and then one at the Nordschleife where he finished in 2nd position. But outside of that, he's not had a podium, and that's simply because of the fact that he's changed his wheel setup, he's changed his rig setup, and he's been adapting to it. But tonight he's looked really on it, and I think we'll find out later that it was a back marker. I think it was Tony Manley who spun round and clattered. Well, as a result, Steve Hall clattered into the side of him with nowhere to go. I'm sure Steve will tell us about that later on. Steve Hall goes around the cutting. Davy Zoutenbayer, less than 4 seconds behind the top 4. I'd like to see Michael van der Waal's next split compared to himself and 3rd place, braking for the cutting. 20 seconds, so the gap is coming down. I'd say if we can have a look at the lap times, that would be beneficial. So Steve Hall did a 2:12.4 on that last lap, compared to a 2:08 from Sebastian Berger, 2:07 from Benedetti, and a 2:10.9 from van der Waal. So about a second and a bit per lap, I think, is what Steve Hall is losing. And obviously, if he has any more mistakes, he hits any more barriers, he knocks into anything, he's going to lose more time. I'll be honest, I am quite staggered that Ferrari is still running in 3rd place, as Joe Warner is still in the pits having repairs done. For those that don't know much about the history of Bathurst, and some of you might not do, it was built in the 1930s, and it's undergone basically 3 different iterations over the time that it has featured as the premier race circuit within Australia. I say premier because I know there's going to be a few people thinking, well, what about Surfers Paradise? Well, I know Surfers Paradise, of course, is a little bit different, but if you look at Melbourne in Australia at Albert Park, you look at Adelaide. But I do believe that, I do genuinely believe that Mount Panorama, it's been around for such a long time, it's such a mainstay of the motorsport calendar, that its legacy is, impossible to overtake from other Australian race circuits. And it's got a legacy as a result of the massive rivalries over the years. Of course, Ford versus Holden over the Bathurst races. All the other drivers who've competed in the Bathurst 1000. And then the Bathurst 24 Hour, which is a huge element of it all too. It's a massive event. And it brings quite a lot of the nation together every single year. Especially with the capacity crowd that it has, because there's so many brilliant spectator spots around Bathurst. We're coming into one of them right now. But it is a great circuit. It's really good to watch, and it like I was saying before, it did have 2 previous iterations to this, and in those days when it was first built in 1938, it stayed in the same format for best part of 50 years, from 1938 right away until the late 80s. It had the same type of race circuit. They improved the barriers, they improved the safety standards, of course, but the track was relatively unchanged. And then in 1987, that's when they made those different changes, added in the chase, and it's pretty much been the same ever since then, with a few very minor tweaks. I will tell you a fact whilst we're here. The reason why the chase is implemented is because when the World Touring Car Championship came to Bathurst in 1987, the FIA had a mandate at the time that no straight on any of the tracks could exceed 1.2 miles. So what they had to do was they just had to cut a little part of the circuit across so that there was a little jut to the right hand side. And obviously when they implemented this, it was naturally the only corner where Peter Brock, the legendary Australian touring car driver, was the only place where he ever had a role back in the 90s. So it's certainly a circuit with, as I said before, legacy and history, and it has earned that through multiple brilliant races over the years. We've got Massimo Benedetti running at the front. He's having a field day out there at the moment, and he's not slowing down, is he? Look, he's currently up on his best lap so far. Only marginally, but that just shows you how hard the Dutchman is pushing. And as it stands, he's going to go undefeated this season in terms of the races he's done. He's his third event, and he looks like he's on his way to taking a third race victory. But it can all still change. We've got a yellow flag out there, and I think that's Byford Rue. I think has been in the wars. That looked like damage to me. Yeah, that's major damage for the Porsche. And after pitting to get a new change of tyres, and he gets right out of the way of Joe Warner. Yeah, that car is not pointing in a straight line, sadly for him. He's going to have to get that Porsche and drag it back to the pit lane, which means that might bring Tony Manley up a spot. It might even bring Joe Warner up a spot, to be fair, because that's going to be quite significant for him to bring it back. Rich Jarram's back in the pit lane. Also, to make a point here that the fastest lap around Bathurst ever is not by any of the current generation of GT3 cars. It's actually a relatively older record. So it was Shane van Gisbergen back at the 2016 race in a McLaren 650S GT3 race car. And he did a 2-minute 1.5. Now, the drivers aren't going to be setting 2-minute 1 lap times, especially as this was part of the Bathurst 12 hours when Van Gisbergen set it. But I have to say, Benedetti's pace is mighty around here. And we know that Sebastian Berger is a phenomenal driver. I've talked him up quite a few times already this evening as the race director looks for some clouds. You know, he came and made his debut with us earlier this season at round number 2. And in that race, you know, when he first popped up at round 2, he was absolutely brilliant. absolutely phenomenal at Paul Ricard. He won the race, he then won at the Hungaroring, and he was fantastic. Missed a couple of races after that, sadly. We didn't see him at the Nordschleife, but he was back at Spa, where he was beaten that day by Andy Skunky. There have been a few drivers this season who have won races, but because they haven't been able to compete full time in the championship, they, aren't as high in the standings as you expect them to be. So, if we look at Danny Zoutenbayer, who leads the championship, he's not won a race this season. Best result that Zoutenbayer has had is second, and that was all the way back at round 4 at Valencia. I say that as if that's a harsh thing. It's not. It just shows you the competitiveness of the championship. Mark Chapman, he's not here this evening. He won one race at round 4 in Valencia. And then if you look through the rest of the driver's standards, Jeffrey Van Buren, who was racing earlier, he got that breakthrough victory, which everyone I think was delighted about, to be fair, for him, at Misano. Held on really nicely and fended off a bunch of drivers that day for that victory. Just put himself in the right place at the right time. Stopped Simon Whiting from taking a race win that day. But then the other drivers who have won races, Sebastian Berger, we've just talked about. Andy Skunky, another one. He was here for round 2 and 3. He finished second at Paul Ricard. He finished 6th at Paul Ricard. He was second at the Hungaroring. And then he won Nordschleife at a canter, did Andy Skunky. He got a drive-through penalty, sadly, for Byford Rue, so his day goes from bad to worse, speeding in the pit lane. But coming back to Skunky, he then won Spa as well at round 6. But then we haven't seen him since, unfortunately. He just hasn't been available. Benedetti has won 2 races, the most recent 2. And the other race winner, who we haven't seen since round 4, is Anthony Hunt. The first race winner of the season at Indianapolis in the Mustang. And then, sadly, we haven't seen much of Anthony Hunt since then. He's finished in the top 5 in the second race of the championship, and then he retired from the next 2. So it is unfortunate that we don't have a bunch of our drivers. We've lost quite a few drivers this season who have had problems. I'm just looking at Davey Zoutenbayer's closing the gap down. Steve Hall has been in the pits whilst we've been speaking. Danny Zoutenbayer is up into 8th place. So his recovery drive starts now. Ross Harris is in 9th and Neil Wright is in the pits. Not far away from halfway distance. An hour remaining in this event. But as I was briefly saying, we've lost a few drivers this season, and in ACC Race Nation, and it has been for a plethora of reasons. It's not just been a case of they've just abandoned because they're not winning races or anything like that. It's certainly not the case. But we look back at drivers including Simon Whiting. He's just not been able to commit to as many races as he would have liked to have done, and to be fair to Simon, he's had quite a lot of bad luck in this championship. He's missed 2 races, well, 3 if you include tonight, but he's one that you would expect to be running in the top 5 today. Anthony Hunt's another one. He's had work commitments, so he hasn't been able to race. Stuart Packham, last season's champion, season 9, his Fanatec wheelbase decided to, well, part of the wheelbase anyway, has given up the ghost, so he's not been able to race as a result. Remy Fermi, he went on this awful running streak, did Fermi, of 4 DNFs in a row before he finally got 2 race finishes. Got an 11th place, actually. did Fermi at Misano, but then another one that we've not seen since. And then there's other drivers like Ardy van Sloot. He was a driver who was quite competitive in a couple of races last season. He's not been able to commit full time. And the one that really got away for me, the biggest one, is Ian McGowan. Because for those that might remember watching the race, Ian McGowan at Misano, debut pole position. And we were thinking, wow, we've got a fight on our hands. And then he disconnected and we haven't seen him since. So we have unfortunately had a few drivers drop out. We've had Josip Kosic and Jordan Harding being unable to race as well. And they would have liked to have done so. What that means is that the top 10 in the driver's standings, as Davy Zoutenbayer continues to close up to his Dutch companion. Not that far away now. Look at that gap, 1.3 seconds. We'll have to tune our attentions to that shortly. What it means is that our top 10 standings is very peculiar for ACC. This is a different type of top 10 than what we're used to. We've got Danny Zoutenbayer leading the way. He's got 222 points. Mark Chapman's second on 196. But he won't be second after tonight. It'll be Dennis Penders. Where is Dennis Penders? He's inside the top 5 at the moment, is the Belgian. Steve Hall is in 4th place, and I think Steve will move into 3rd in the driver's standings, I think, at the moment. Michael van der Waal is 5th. And in the pits as well. So Davy Zoutenbayer was catching him. He's decided to pull the trigger and pit before him. Hopefully the new set of tyres can give him some extra grip. Tony Manley is 6th overall on 173 points. Jeffrey Van Buren, who isn't here today, he retired from today's race, he's on 165. John Wells is 8th on 152, but John, to be fair, has had a few races that he's not been able to finish through illness and all sorts of madness. Davy Zoutenbayer is 9th on 140. Davy currently running in 3rd position. And then rounding out your top 10, and this just shows you the consistency of the man who just continues to keep finishing and doesn't give up. Joe Warner, not normally in his Joker livery, but is for tonight, is 10th on 136. It's going to be hard for him to keep that position though, because Ross Harris is 11th on 136 points between the two. I mean, at the moment, Joe's going to keep the place and he's going to finish in the top 10, but can all change. Other drivers who are here, Neil Wright, he's in 12th on 117, and Mike Verwijs is 13th and 115 points for the other Dutchman of the field. We've got a lot of Dutch drivers in our championship here. And to those that are still watching, it's great to have you with us. It's been up and down, the viewership count. We were in double digits earlier. We're back down to a few lower numbers, but people will tune in as and when they come along. Sadly for us, Michael van der Waal pitted. And interestingly, van der Waal has come out behind Steve Hall. But not by as much as I was expecting. That gap is 11 seconds. So Steve did lose a lot of time because of the damage and obviously getting that fixed, I believe, in the pit stop. Just looking, I want to see the front end of his car. Yeah, that looks a lot more tidier now. Let's get on board for our lap of Bathurst with Benedetti. So the McLaren powers out of Hell Corner and will go right up the hill towards turn number 2 at Quarry Bend. Windscreen wiper flapping furiously in this wet weather, 151.2 miles an hour as he brakes for Quarry. 3rd gear for the Ferrari driver, over the curb he runs, and then he's going to have turns 3 and 4 at the cutting. Getting down through the gears. Nicely done that from the Dutchman. Through turn 5 and then turn 6 as well. Over the crest into 7 and 8, Frogs Hollow. It it's Solomon Park and then McPhillamy Park for 9 and 10. Look how close he's getting to the curb. He's right on it, is the Dutchman, and then he's going to brake for the chicane. Brakes in stages, does Benedetti. That's what's keeping the car so stable through the chicane and through the dipper. And all he now has to navigate is the next left-hander through Forest Elbow, and then he gets a nice breather. We are now past halfway distance tonight's race, but this is just showing you how quick he is at the moment. Over the top of the rise, 167, 8, 9, 71 miles an hour through the chase, down through the gears, then into second for the left-hander. Just nails the apex each time. A little bit of oversteer, but honestly that's very, very minimal in the grand scheme of it. Couple of corners, he's navigated beautifully well on this lap, and he's got one corner left for this lap as he moves on to lap 29, and it's a 2 minute 6.8. And if he hadn't clamped the curb at the final corner going into Murray's, I reckon that would have been a new fastest lap. He is pushing hard. Everyone is pushing hard. There's no one here who isn't pushing hard, but it's all relative, really. Going to go on board with Joe Warner. We'll compare the fastest driver to the slowest driver, not in the sense that we're going to take the mick out of Joe, but it's just for his sake. It would be good for him to watch this bike back. He's got a blue flag behind him. I think that's Neil Wright behind us. Oh, into the wall, and that's just all from the fact that the car just lost the back end, and he's just trying to get the car turned around, and he's hit the spares box advertising there, which is probably where his McLaren will end up following the completion of tonight's race. He will get the car turned around, ladies and gentlemen. I believe in him. He's waiting patiently for Davies out and Bayer to go through, and off he goes. He'll have a little bit of damage on that McLaren. I wanted to watch him then, but he's going to have to go back to the pits and get that damage fixed. So we'll try and catch a lap with him later on. Let's compare it to Ross Harris, though. They are in different cars, but see, Harris, no issues for the left-hander at McPhillamy. You can see just a little bit more of a hesitation for the Lamborghini driver. And then it's all about the oversteer and understeer that the Lamborghini is having right now. Down into first at the left-hander. He's got Danny Felix just a couple of seconds up the road, actually, and this is full position. You know, the Lamborghini is going to have to find a way past the M4, and we've seen tonight the M4 is a difficult car to overtake on the straights. Into the pits comes Davy Zoutenbayer then from third on the road. And he's currently a lap down on our race leader is Zoutenbayer, but again our race leader is still yet to pit. It's 2:12.4 from Ross Harris. Just trying to see what Danny Felix's lap time was compared to that. 2:12. And that's for position in a moment. We'll come back to that. 2:12 flat, so they're lapping at the same speed. Now, this is for position. So Danny Zoutenbayer, despite finding the barrier earlier on in his race, is now right with Steve Hall. And I'm going to assume they'll get out in front of Davy Zoutenbayer. They do indeed. And with the Ferraris having a status quo, it's going to come down to driver ability here in these wet conditions. And the 296 GT3 cars are going to be dependent on the driver focus being absolutely spot on. The cars have started to come back together again. This is what happens in ACC Race Nation races. We do have a stint in the middle where it goes a little bit quieter, But Penders and Michael van der Waal are together on circuit, and Davy Zoutenbayer has just come out of the pits behind them. So that pit stop has really benefited Dennis Penders. It's put him in 5th place. We're watching Zoutenbayer harrying and hassling the back of the red Ferrari in front of us. Ooh. The British GT banner there was as close to the wall as it ever wants to get. There's Davies out in there by, and there's Dennis Penders, and in shot just behind is Van der Waal. So these two have found each other. We ride with the helmet cam. You can see all the pedals being pressed from the helmet cam. You just see Zoutenbayer's got blue shoes. I was going to say before, someone's running with very, very bright green shoes. I think you've got to have a word with the clobberers about that one. Zoutenbayer not quite close enough to the back of Hall to make a move, as our race leader is in the pit. So Benedetti, after 29 laps, has decided to make his pit stop. Penders doesn't have to worry about Van der Waal behind, who is just here in fact, because he's just a little bit further back. But again, the tyre strategies are going to be different here as well, because Penders pitted earlier, I believe, than the Dutchman that we're on board with at the moment. So that could still change. What Davy Zoutenbayer's lap... Well, I was going to say what his lap's going to be, but that's not really accurate because he's just come out of the pits. Danny Zoutenbayer doesn't care about lap times, he cares about getting past the Ferrari. He's looking to the inside at turn 3. And Steve Hall had to defend the middle of the road there just to act as a deterrent to the Dayglow yellow Ferrari, the 101. The man who has got one hand on the championship title tonight. We are on lap 30 of this race. The spray being kicked up by the Ferrari in front of us is under extreme pressure from the Dutchman we ride on board with. Small lift for the understeer that's following in the wake of the car in front of us. Down through the gears they go into the dipper. Zoutenbayer looks like he's got his confidence back after that incident earlier on in the race. But will Zoutenbayer have to pit again? He did pit early to fix his damage and clips the wall on the exit of Forest Elbow. That was a big impact actually with the wall there. Just looking to see, it doesn't look like there's too much damage visually on the car, but it's not going to help the situation at all. Looks the inside at the exit of the chase, but no room for manoeuvre. Doesn't look as if it's affected Zoutenbayer too much actually. Oh, that's a little bit wide from Steve Hall. This is a chance for Zoutenbayer. He's going to look to the inside. Hall tries to cover the inside line, but he's not got across quick enough. And the yellow Ferrari's on the inside as they brake for Hell Corner. And the Ferrari, the brighter one that is, looks as if he's gone through, but they are going to be nip and tuck on the exit of turn 1. But I think Zoutenbayer has got that position in his pocket. I don't think he's going to be close enough, Hall, to try and make a lunge into turn number 2, and he isn't. And Zoutenbayer moves on to the podium places. We also have a yellow flag out there. Byford Rue is having a struggle. Yeah, he's actually completely off the road at McPhillamy Park, so he's gone flying off. Just have to wait. I was about to say we're just going to have to wait and see what damage he's got, but that is pretty significant, I think. So that is another trip back to the pits as Benedetti tries to overtake the Porsche, which he manages to do so without too much grief. Zoutenbayer, Davey, he's in 7th place and he's now closing that gap on Michael van der Waal in front of us, who I think van der Waal is having a solid race, but I just think he's struggling at times with the conditions. I think his consistency is just flipping from lap to lap, really. Despite that, though, he is running inside the top 6. You can't fault his effort. He's having a strong race out there once again. Penders is having an even better one. And despite spinning off the road, he's only 14 seconds behind Steve Hall. And it's just making me think, what might have happened had Penders not had those incidents? Because he'd be in the fight for the podium places, I think, were it not for those issues. But the Belgian has certainly improved dramatically this championship. Van der Waal still in 6th place. Benedetti we've seen a few times so far this evening. Oh, Joe Warner. No one sleeps in Tokyo, or in this case, no one sleeps in Bathurst. That was full-blown drifting action. Oh, Tony Manley's hit the wall. Maybe just getting a bit distracted by Joe Warner's drifting techniques there, but the Italian, that will have knocked a few corners together on the car. Not ideal. Joe Warner just taking it steady. Let's have a quick overview then of where we are with almost 3/4 of the race having been done. Massimo Benedetti leads the way. He is comfortably clear of Sebastian Berger in the 585 Porsche in 2nd position. Danny Zoutenbayer is in 3rd place, but is now a lap down behind Benedetti. Steve Hall is in 4th place. Dennis Penders is in 5th and pulling away from Michael van der Waal, who is now being reeled in by Davy Zoutenbayer. Danny Felix is in 8th place and having a very quiet and unassuming race outside of the issue that he had earlier on. He's had a really solid drive. Ross Harris is not too far away. He had issues earlier on, did Ross, but seems to have overcome them quite well. Neil Rice is in 10th. Then it's Tony Manley in 11th place as Byford Rue gets out of the way. And Joe Warner is in 13th position. We have lost another driver who I'm just trying to work out who that is. As Byford Rue actually moves out of the way for Joe Warner. So Joe now only 2 laps down on Byford Rue. I'm just trying to see who it is we've lost. Rich Jarram is the other driver we've lost. So from this race we've had Rich Jarram go out, so the only Mustang has gone. John Wells has gone. And unfortunately we also lost Jeffrey Van Buren. So the drivers who qualified 6th, 10th and 14th respectively no longer in the session. We look at the lap times of the drivers so far. Byford Rue in the grass again. You know, Benedetti, just a measure of consistency. Look at those lap times. They are staggering in that car, I have to say. Doing 2-minute 7s pretty much across the board, even a 2-minute 6. Really impressive. You know, Sebastian Berger is also lapping very well. He's in the 2-minute 8, but just showing you how fast the Dutchman is at the minute. And if we just cut down to... You can no longer do that. The timetables decided to have a little glitch out, so we can't do that. Now, whilst I've been talking, there has been a change of position. And you can see that Davy Zoutenbayer is in 6th position. I think Michael van der Waal has found the wall, just like he did at the exit of Forest Elbow. So I think Van der Waal now is just starting to have a bit of a struggle. Now, for the Dutchman, it does look as if he's... Let's have a look at his car in a straight line. See if that damage is significant enough for him to come into the pits. It does look like he's struggling a little bit with the front end. It definitely looks like there's some understeer on that car, but it isn't affecting him right now. Zoutenbayer in 6th place is now catching Penders. That gap is barely anything at all. It's 2 seconds now between the Belgian and the Dutchman. Benedetti, I actually can't calculate how far in front he... Actually, I can calculate how far in front he is. Sebastian Berger goes across the line now and he's 64 seconds behind, so it's unrelenting, this drive from Benedetti. He is in a class of his own. If this was... If we were looking at GT3 cars, you'd think that Benedetti's driving a GT2 car in that respect, but he is absolutely owning this race circuit. I'm mightily impressed. He has been getting driver of the day as a result of his dominant performances. But I'm going to have a look through. Joe Warner's in 13th. If he can beat Byford Rue, he could also give Joe Warner Byford Rue's got more damage actually, so that Porsche is going to be going back into the pits. It's been a nightmare for him. Ross Harris is recovering. Sebastian Berger's had a good drive so far, with 42 minutes and 37 seconds to go. He's been very solid today. And I wonder what would have happened to Berger had he have not had that qualifying issue. Because if he'd have started on the front row, I think he would have given Benedetti a little bit more to think about in terms of his race runs. Because his lap times aren't a million miles away from the McLaren. Maybe about a second slower, but that's enough around Bathurst to cause someone grief. Neil Wright's had a few pit stops. He's been a bit unlucky today. In his... I'm going to call that the Samba livery that he's running, and a change of sponsor. He's clearly being sponsored by Petrobras. Byford Rue, as I thought, is back into the pits. Manley, he's had a few scrapes of the wall. Again, he's driven brilliantly. He had that really good defensive part of the race earlier on, but he's been in the pits. He was in the pits for a while. He's actually off the back of a few drivers. If I look, he's on lap 32. Neil Wright's the next driver on lap 32, and we know Neil's been in the pits a couple of times, so something major happened to the Italian. I've got to say, Danny Felix I've been really impressed with. The next gen driver joining the championship, joining ex next gen drivers in a really good competitive championship. I've actually been quietly impressed with his drive today. I think his only blip, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, as he flashes the lights down the straight just to check that they're working. I think his only blip is really the incident that he had earlier on, when he... Oh, well, and now this. As he decides, with commentator's curse, to prove me wrong, going into turn number 21. He's going to get lapped by Benedetti. Steve Hall's been good as well. I think everyone's... To be honest with you, it's quite difficult to say who's had a bad race, because everyone's had a few issues through the race. The only two that haven't are Berger and Benedetti at the front. So if I'm thinking about driver of the day, it's going to be one of those two. Now, we've got a little bit of a fight on here. Davy Zoutenbayer has closed up to 5th position. They've got Joe Warner just in front of them. This is a little bit tricky. The McLaren just moving out of the way. And they both navigate past Joe relatively easily. Danny Zoutenbayer is in the pits, as is Byford Rue. So our 4th place driver. So I had a feeling that Danny Zoutenbayer might have to pit again, and sadly he has done. So this is going to drop him outside. And the reason why I thought that was because he pitted so early because of his damage at the exit of this corner here. Penders has got his indicators on. Don't know if he knows that. Maybe the sound of the cockpit is too loud for him to hear the indicator start going. But the Ferrari number 18 is in the slipstream. You can see underneath the diffuser. He's going to look to the outside line at turn 2. He's going to go all the way around the outside. No, there's a massive accident between the two. And for Davy Zoutenbayer and Dennis Penders, it's all gone horribly wrong. And Davy Zoutenbayer returns to the pits. Michael van der Waal moves up to 4th place. That is a massive accident. It was always going to happen. Penders is struggling to get the car back. That was an almighty crash between the two. And I think they've just come to blows at the corner. Whether Penders clipped the curb, I don't know. But the point is they've both gone off and they've both had a massive impact. And any outside chance that they had of getting a podium has evaporated into the Bathurst rain this evening. Massive shame, because they've both been driving really strongly. But for Davy Zoutenbayer anyway, that's going to put him further back in the field. That means Danny Zoutenbayer is going to be in the top 5 then, despite his massive impact earlier. And Dennis Penders is going to drag this car all the way back. So, just looking at the race running. Yeah, Danny Felix is the car that's behind Danny Zoutenbayer. So he might fall behind him, but then Ross Harris is on lap 35 at the moment. Yeah, so he's a lap back. Obviously, it'd be great to see what... Yeah, Davy Zoutenbayer's on lap 36, so... Danny Zoutenbayer is going to get into 5th place. It means Danny Felix is going to move into 6th position. Because I can't see why Davy Zoutenbayer would be able to get that damage fixed and get back out in time. Dennis Penders has brought the car back to the pits, so he's not going to lose a lap. He's going to lose a spot, possibly 2. And there is the Ferrari just pulling into the background. So I'm sure the 2 team crews will be having words with one another about that incident. I'm sure they'll be finger blaming each other, but in truth, I think it was a case of 2 into 1 at that moment in time just did not want to happen. Davy Zoutenbayer is not happy. I've just had a look at the race room chat and he is furious. I think he's pinning the blame on Penders, but I'm sure they'll both have their own version of events. And what this means is that Michael van der Waal, despite his struggles, and they have been struggles, don't get me wrong, is in 4th place. And Joe Warner just taps the wall as he tries to get out of the way. But Michael van der Waal, he got 4th place last week, and I did say earlier, and I said this to everybody, do not be surprised if there's a couple of surprise results today, because this is a 2-hour event. It's not a 1-hour race, it's a 2-hour, and van der Waal, well, that would have been a bit embarrassing if he'd gone off at that corner there. It's not even Forest Elbow. It would have been a very strange spin. But the Dutchman is just plugging away. He's about 40 seconds or so behind Steve Hall in 3rd place. So he's reliant on there being an accident for Steve Hall, realistically. I think on this lap, Michael van der Waal's had a half spin somewhere because he's actually 5 seconds down. So he's not finding it easy out there. And no one's finding it easy out there, to be honest with you. The conditions are really, really challenging. When we last raced at Bathurst, it was in the dry, and the drivers found it exceptionally challenging at that point as well. So not too much of a surprise that we've had so many incidents this evening. No incidents for this man. Benedetti is about to put another lap on the Ferrari in front of us. He's just having a great time out there. His setup is clearly in a good spot. It's something that he can lean on, evidently. And at the end of the day, I know people might say, oh, well, you know, the setup does make a massive difference. And you're right, it does. But fundamentally, you have to be a good driver to make the best of a good setup. You know, there are drivers over the years who perhaps have paid for setups on specialist forums or websites and such, and they've just not been able to get the victories or the results. Benedetti, he might have the best setup in the world, but he's making good use of it. And his gap at the front is astounding. You know, he was over 60 seconds clear of Sebastian Berger, and it just doesn't look like he's going to slow down. There's Benedetti. Zoutenbayer moved out of the way nicely. Joe Warner is in 12th place, and I think we've lost Jacob Byford-Rue. I think he's retired. I'll just return to the garage to confirm this. No, it is not Byford-Rue, so it's Davy Zoutenbayer. So we've lost Davy Zoutenbayer, who was in a fight with Dennis Penders, sadly. That battle is over and done. Oh, that's a shame. Oh, Joe. No, 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 no. Take it steady, Joe. Come on. Now, we do have a new fight. Because of the accident that Penders had, it's put him a second and a half behind Ross Harris, who's in the wall. Well, we were going to have a fight, and then Ross decided to pick a fight with the wall, and the wall won, so Dennis Penders moves up into 7th place, and that's going to be a trip into the pit lane for the Lamborghini. And I was just about to get excited. Hello to everyone who's still in the chat watching away. Hope you're having a good time. We are almost less than a quarter of a way to go in this race. And the next challenge will be to see whether Dennis Penders will be able to close the gap on Danny Felix in 6th position. Danny Zoutenbayer is in 5th place. Michael van der Waal is still running. Just wondering in terms of the gap between himself and Danny Zoutenbayer. It's about 51, 52 seconds at the minute. And Van der Waal is doing 2-minute 12s. fact, I'm just looking to see. Yeah, that gap's come down a little bit. So, despite having a big plough into the wall earlier, our championship leader in 5th place is closing the gap back down on Michael van der Waal. This would be a very impressive drive. We've got 29 minutes to go. Let's just have a look at the lap times here. So, on the last lap, Michael van der Waal, in the last few laps, he's been a little bit inconsistent, to be fair. Yeah, very inconsistent, actually. You can see he's been a little bit all over the shop, and I think he might be carrying damage, to be honest, but a 2:12.5 was his best lap for a while. Since lap 32, actually, for Michael van der Waal. So he did a 2:12.5. The other laps before that were a little bit compromised. If we look at Danny Zoutenbayer, 2:09, 3 seconds. That's an immense. In fact, 2:08. Danny Zoutenbayer, since he's got those new tyres on, he's absolutely stonking along. This lap for van der Waal is going to be a 2:12.4. As Ross Harris comes into the pit lane with damage. So that means Neil Wright is going to move into 8th position. There is the Porsche. Into 8th he goes. Unless he is a lap behind Ross Harris. No, there we go. He's up to 8th place. Tony Manley might catch up to the back of Ross Harris here because he's not too far away. That's a fight that's not over yet. Danny Felix is in 6th position at the minute. He's got Dennis Penders still on the back of him. See if we can get on board with the Ferrari, actually. I say this because Danny Felix is now coming into the pits, but that is positive for Penders, because what that means now, the Belgian is going to be on the same lap as Felix. He is lapping quicker than the BMW at the minute, so we'll see if these massive gaps that we've got at the moment can come back together in these last 27 minutes of the race at hand. Van der Waal is still struggling. I'm convinced now that Van der Waal is carrying some significant damage. But it just shows you, even if you have a few wobbles during the race, you can still put yourself in a position where you can get a 4th place result. That just says it all, really. But he's got a 41 second advantage to Danny Zoutenbayer, so it's not all over yet. And if he is closing at 3 seconds a lap, in 10 laps time, which would give us 5 laps to go of this race, it would bring him within 10 seconds. Let's just have a look at... There's a lot of... The problem that I've got is I'm trying to... Off the top of my head, I'm trying to work out the gap from sector to sector. It's a little bit difficult to do when you don't have live data to go alongside that. We are on lap 42 at the moment, and Byford Rue is off the road at turn 1. I think he's just understeered off the road. Just looking at the gap between Zoutenbayer and Michael van der Waal, the gap is now 40 seconds. So, I think Ross Harris has gone round again. And he's been in the wall again. At pretty much the same corner. As he moves out of the way of Sebastian Berger. He's pulled over. Oh, and he's gone back to the pits. He was having such a good race as well. That is a shame for Ross Harris. He was having a really good race, and that was it. He just made a mistake, and it just seems to have all fallen away from him. Maybe going back into the pits and having just a little reset might do him the world of good. I do hope so. Byford Roos still circulating in the number 21. Oh, he's really having a few issues with the left-hander there. He's been off the road there a couple of times now. But we move into the last 24 minutes of what has been a really incident-packed race. Lots of talking points. But at the moment, the biggest talking point is how big is the gap going to be between Massimo Benedetti and Sebastian Berger? That's what we're going to find out, because these two are the only ones on the lead lap now. And they have been for quite some time. I think Steve Hall would have also been on the lead lap, to be honest, but with his incident earlier on, that's put a scupper on that. Oh, Tony Manley's found the barrier. Every time we cut to somebody, they seem to be in a bit of strife. So, looks like nobody wants a spot inside the top 10 today. And Manley going off the road. Oh wow, that is a massive amount of damage. Look at the wheel. Look how much lock he's having to put on to keep the car in a straight line. I don't think he's going to make the cut. He did make the corner. He'll make the right-hander, but getting into the pits is going to be a challenge. Sebastian Berger is just coming up to the back of this, but I don't think he's going to be impacted by it. No, he won't be. He should be fine. If I was Tony, I'd start braking a little bit earlier than what he's doing, but he's made it into the pits. This is a proper war of attrition tonight. It's really been a big test for everybody, and we've lost another driver. We've lost another one. So we've had a few retirements. We lost Davy Zattenby. We've lost Richard Jarham. Just trying to work out who it is who we've just lost there. Yeah, Byford Roos still running. Top 4 are all still in the race. Lost Jeffrey Van Buren. Did Ross Harris retire? Yes, he did. That's the one we lost. So Ross Harris, sadly, the next driver to have retired out of the race. And that just leaves us with almost 20 minutes to go. Oh my God. Ladies and gentlemen, I just saw a slide from Massimo Benedetti. Jeez, everyone take a breather. He's just slid out the corner. It's the first time we've seen him lose any form of car control in this race. Or at least caught, anyway. Sebastian Berger's going through the dip. And Benedetti is at turn 3. Well, approaching turn 3. They've got a lap on Steve Hall. Van der Waal is 4th. And that gap between Zoutenbayer and Van der Waal is a lot closer. Then Danny Felix and Penders are in 6th and 7th. But I think Penders now might be a bit too far back from Felix after his pit stop. And Felix gets right out of the way. Neil Wright's in 8th. Tony Manley is 9th. In fact, the bottom 3 are all in the pits. Byford Rue is now only 1 lap clear of Joe Warner. If Joe Warner gets past Byford Rue, he will be on the same lap. I can't remember the last time that Joe Warner was able to beat someone on track, but I would love to see that. It'd be such a good achievement. Even if he has had a massive struggle in. Let's ride on board with Steve Hall. We haven't ridden on board with him for a while. As he goes through the left-hander, we can see that Steve is just taking it steady through McPhillamy Park. He's got lap traffic in front of him in the form of the Belgian Dennis Penders. But this has been a really nice return to form for Steve, and I think he'll be optimistic about his chances in season 11. But I think for Hall right now, he's concentrating, he's focused on getting to the end of this race. He's got 70 seconds to Michael van der Waal in 4th place. He doesn't have to worry really about the cars behind. He does have to worry about the car directly in front of him though. Danny Zoutenbayer, that was wide at turn number 2. He got away with that. The gap between himself and Van der Waal is now, I'm going to say it's about 30 seconds, just under. I don't think he's going to catch the McLaren. He's not catching the McLaren at the same rate of knots as he was before. But I still think this is a mighty recovery drive from the soon-to-be crowned champion, providing that there's... I mean, even if there was a disconnection for him, I think with where Dennis Penders is, I don't think he's going to win the race from there. So you are looking at the man who's going to take the Season 10 championship here with ACC Race Nation. And I've got to say, it's well deserved, because Danny made his... For those that haven't been watching since last season, Danny made his debut at Nordschleife. And I've always been impressed with him from day one, because when he appeared at the Nordschleife, he actually joined the race late. And he started the race a lap down, and we had 18 cars that day. And he finished in the top 10, even though he started a lap down. And this is at the Nordschleife. This is a 8-minute circuit, or a 9-minute circuit in terms of GT3 cars. So I've always been impressed with him from that point on, and he's always had some really good podium results. He doesn't normally put a foot wrong, to be honest with you. I think today being the exception, but if you're going to make your first mistake, you want to do it today of all days, because he's been absolutely fantastic this season. And I've said a number of times that he might not have won a race this season, but it's not that the fact that he's been far away from the race victories. He really hasn't. You know, he was unlucky not to win last season at times. He was unlucky this season as well not to be able to take a race victory. Don't do that, Zoutenbayer. I'm giving you some praise. I want to be running on the grass. But his lowest finish of the season has been 7th. And he's only had that once. Every single race, bar round 1, so 2 races in the championship, has he finished outside of the top 4. That's how consistent he's been. He's always been there. And I think, were it not for Benedetti or Berger showing up in the limited capacity that they've done, he would have already had that first race victory by now, I believe. I'm fully confident in that, because his speed at times is absolutely incredible. He is now only 24 seconds behind Michael van der Waal. I don't think this is over yet. I really don't. I think Van der Waal is still limping along with damage, but I think Zoutenbayer is pushing so hard. He's making a few mistakes, but I think he's pushing so hard that he can get up to the Dutchman and get 4th place. And if he does get 4th place, that would almost be worthy of driver of the day for me. I know people will be sat at home thinking, are you sure driver of the day going his way and not to Benedetti or Berger? No, I don't think so. And I think because Benedetti is so good, he knows he can be driver of the day whenever he wants to be. I always do like to give driver of the day out to drivers who have either overcome a massive incident or put in a really good performance. It might not be a race winner, but they've secured a really strong result. We had Mike Verwijs had that at Spa earlier in the season when he got that top 6 result. He'd never finished in the top 6 with ACC before. Well, since I've been commentating on the league anyway. So I do like to reward drivers who've come back from strife. Gap now 23 and a bit seconds between himself and Michael van der Waal. 14 minutes to go. I think there's enough time for 7 laps. So let's apply this. Let's do some quick mathematics. Let's go into the race. Let's go to van der Waal. We have to scroll through quite a lot of laps. And Zoutenbay's hit the wall, and that's not going to do him any good, is it? Van der Waal did a 2:16.9 on that last lap. And if Zoutenbay's got damage from that, it's going to really cost him. I don't think he thumped the wall too hard. Yeah, and Zoutenbay did a 2:11. But when the drivers aren't having an anomalous lap, Zoutenbay has been in the 11s and the 10s. So the last few laps, 11s and 10s for Zoutenbay. For van der Waal, he was doing, if we just have a quick scan back, 12s, 13s, 14s. So he was losing somewhere between a second to 2-3 seconds a lap. So if he does start losing 2-3 seconds a lap and we've got enough time for 7 laps, that'll be 21 seconds. And the gap is 15. So van der Waal's had another issue out there. And despite Zoutenbay hitting the wall, he's closing the gap. Oh no, that's bigger than that. That's bigger than that. Michael van der Waal has seen the barrier. And that is his 4th place gone. He's coming into the pits. And that is a massive shame. I know that I've been building up the suspense between these two because the gap has been coming down. But I really would have loved to have seen van der Waal fending off Zoutenbay. But sadly, that damage is too much to continue. And I was wondering if he'd have had a massive accident, did van der Waal, and he must have had a sizable shunt. So, 4th place was Zoutenbay. I'm a little bit sad actually that's been settled off circuit, but unfortunately it has done. So the top 2 drivers, the only 2 that haven't been in the wars, still run on the lead lap. I'm going to tell you what Benedetti's gap is to Sebastian Berger. Whoosh, how close was Benedetti to the inside advertising hoardings there at the depot. That was beautifully close. So at the moment, Benedetti is 87 seconds in front of Sebastian Berger. Seismic is how I would describe that. Seismic. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's almost so impressive that you can't help but marvel at the speed that he is circulating in that McLaren. He's still on for like best laps of the race, even though his tyres are so old. Comes around the final corner, 2 minutes 7 flat. I'm astounded at the competitiveness of this guy. He's absolutely having a whale of a time out there. Absolutely flying. He's got 10 minutes to go. He could put a foot wrong and put it in the wall, but I think his gap is that big that if he did have a mini incident, he'd still come out in front of Berger. I think that's the gap he's got at the moment. Joe Warner is in 11th place. He's on for his best result of the season. He's on lap 38. He is quite a long way behind, but I think with Joe, more learning to be done in the off-season, help him get more competitive. Be good for somebody from the ACC Race Nation community to actually have a sit down with Joe and just help him through and give him a little bit of driver coaching, because I think with Joe, he would benefit from just that little bit of mentoring. That always helps any driver anyway. I'm not saying this just because Joe's at the back of the field, but when you've adjusted to a new game, it can be quite a challenge, and having that little bit of support can help. And I'm sure the community will come together to give him a little bit of a helping hand. Byford Rue, I think he's just having a difficult race today. As I say that, he's planted the wall at turn 2. He is a lap ahead, pretty much, effectively, of Joe Warner, but he's not having the easiest time of it. Sebastian Berger doing 2:08. I think for Berger, he's just pushing as hard as he can, but he is a lap clear. Pretty much as Steve Hall. As we go into single digits, Danny Felix has had a fabulous race. He's been really, really mightily impressive today. I think if it were not for his incident that he had earlier on, I'd be looking at giving Felix driver of the day, to be honest. And is that Zoutenbayer in the pits? Yeah, Danny Zoutenbayer's in the pits. So I wonder if Danny's had damage and he's had to go back into the pits. That means Van der Waal is back in 4th place. Yeah, he's had a massive impact. So after getting into 4th place, which is what he's been after all race long, he's found the barrier, and our champion-elect has got his damage fixed, and he's going to be going back out there, but he's lost. As a result, he's also lost 5th place because Danny Felix is now up in the top 5. I said there'd be surprise results, everybody. This is it right here. Danny Felix has had one finish in the top 10 in the 3 races he's done, and it was 10th place. If Michael van der Waal has any other problems, you could be looking at a Felix top 4. Although if he runs that wide, he won't be. So Zoutenbayer now back on track. Now the question is, this is going to be a challenge for Zoutenbayer, but 7 minutes to go. Can he catch Felix? He is very quick, Zoutenbayer, and if he does catch up to Felix, it'd be just such a yo-yo race. He's 20 seconds behind Felix. Let's have a look at the lap times. So Felix at the moment, in the last few laps, he was doing, or has been doing, well, he had done a 2:09 actually. He was in a right rhythm. 2:10s, 2:11s. Oh, Zoutenbayer having a huge moment on the exit of McPhillamy Park. And now he's in the barrier. So I don't think Zoutenbayer is going to catch up to him. He's having a bit of a mess. Little bit pointless in looking at the lap times, I think, after seeing that. So at the moment, Michael van der Waal in 4th place is doing 2:13s. Felix has been catching him, but 30 seconds I think is a bit too much of an ask for the M4 driver. There's quite a few cars close together on circuit going down the main straight. Van der Waal's one of them. He's just lapping Joe Warner, is Benedetti in front of us. And Manley is also there in 9th position. Less than 6 minutes to go now, and the drivers are going to be exhausted, I think. It's been such a hard race. I have to say credit to absolutely everybody who is going to make it to the end of this race, because it's been so difficult. And I've got the utmost respect for everybody who does take part in the longer races here at ACC Race Nation, because it is such a challenge. And I don't think you can overestimate just how much sweat is going to be coming off some of the drivers, but also the mental fatigue that comes along with doing 2 hours at such a challenging circuit. It's the physical capacity that is needed to be able to navigate, this circuit, which is 3.8 miles, and it's an intense circuit as well. Yes, you've got your breaks in sector 1 and sector 3 with the straight, but sector 2, there's so many input adjustments that need to be done on the steering wheel in these GT3 cars that it's not a surprise that quite a number of drivers have found the barriers. But the ordeal is almost over for them. Less than 5 to go. As Benedetti set to 2 minutes 7.8 on that most recent lap. And the time is coming up to 10 o'clock British Standard Time for those that are watching. If you're watching via Twitch and you're not in the UK, it is 10 o'clock here at the moment. We're having a whale of a time. And we're going to be looking forward to Season 11. A number of people have been asking me, Jack, are you going to be commentating on Season 11? And the answer at the moment to that question is a little muddled. Now, it's not because I don't want to, because I do want to. But I will be going on holiday, so I'm going to be missing a couple of races. Might even be 4 races that I will be missing, sadly, from the calendar. I'm not sure yet. It depends when the season starts, exactly when that will happen. But there will be content streamed for Season 11, so rest easy on that. We are going to have some action for you and for everybody to commentate on, so I will be back. I'm excited to see how the championship develops for next season, and I'm sure that the pickup of drivers will come back as well. I think obviously we're going into what is effectively the summer holidays now for a number of drivers who will be affected by that. They'll be going on holiday, so I'm sure that the guys at ACC Race Nation, the admin team, will be sorting all of that out. Maybe they'll put a little bit of a delay on Season 11 before it restarts again. But the guys at the team are brilliant. They will communicate that to everybody. We'll see when the next season starts. Season 11 on ACC Race Nation. That's going to be exciting times ahead. Someone did ask me the other day, Jack, what type of... would you like to see any changes to any formats for the racing? One thing that I'd like to see, and this is just coming from my perspective, and you can feel free to disagree with this, I would like to see a race that is split in half to have 2 races. Now, what I mean by that, as Van der Waal destroys the plastic foaming, warning everybody about the 100 metres to turn 1, what I mean by that is I would like to see a race that is done in 2 halves. So I'd like to see maybe a short qualifying session, 10 minutes long maybe, do a 30-minute race, take the times of everybody that's done it, jot them down, see what the time gaps are, and then do another 30-minute race and have an accumulated time at the end of the action for the hour. I think that'd be quite exciting. I think it's just a little bit of a shake-up. Maybe it could be a little bit different maybe from one of the 2-hour races. You could do a 30 minute race split. It's an idea. But it's always good every once in a while to just have a little bit of a shake-up for one of the formats. But again, I am not the one that does all the hard work to set up this championship. Absolutely not. So I can't take any credit. But we are in the last minute of action here. And this guy has been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Sebastian Berger is at turn 1 on the exit of it. Benedetti is now coming into the chase. And to be fair to Benedetti, what's he going to do? Is he going to... I was going to say, is he going to slow down? Of course he's not going to slow down. He's going to go flat out to the final corner. I'm just wondering, is he going to cross the beam before the timer runs out? Yeah, he's going to cross the beam. He's not slowing down, so he cracks on. And that's going to give him the final lap of the race then. The timer has ticked over. Tony Manley comes across the line. He's going on to his final lap. Michael van der Waal goes on to his final lap. Danny Felix is going to finish in 5th place. What a drive. Neil Wright, as the camera picks him up further down the chase. He's got a little bit longer to go. Joe Warner's got a little bit longer to go. Our champion-elect has got a little bit longer to go. But I don't think he'll care. I think he'll be happy with 6th place. It'll be the best 6th place he's ever had in his racing career. I'm sure of it. Damon saying, sounds like a good idea. Thanks, Damon. Appreciate that. I've got one person who supports me with the idea. That's all that matters. So, the last lap of the season for our champion-elect. I'm sure he's just going to enjoy it. Because that's all he has to do now. Dennis Penders. To be fair to Dennis Penders, he could have finished in the top 4 today. A couple of incidents, sadly, took him away from that. Sebastian Berger is now going to start his final lap. He's actually just behind Steve Hall. So he will put a lap on the Ferrari. But we go forward to the absolute decimation drive of the day for Massimo Benedetti, the Dutchman. I am not often gobsmacked by a performance, but this guy for 56 laps has not put a foot wrong. And I've barely seen a slide from him. The 2-1-0 is going to take his 3rd victory of the season. Fantastic. What a drive. Jacob Byford-Root, he's going to get his best result of the season inside the top 10. Tony Manley will finish in 9th position. Michael van der Waal, despite all the issues that he's had, he's going to come home in 4th place. Brilliant drive. Really brilliant drive. Well done to van der Waal. A 2nd, 4th place in a row. Danny Felix. Were it not for Massimo Benedetti, I'd have given him drive of the day. But Benedetti has been outstanding. So Benedetti will get driver of the day. I think it's only fair that he does. He rounds the final corner, does Danny Felix. Well done. Great performance. Neil Wright will be another one to cross the line, as will Joe Warner. But here is the champion. 3 corners to go. And he's taking it nice and steady. Of course he is. He doesn't have to worry about anyone behind him. The Dayglow yellow Ferrari has just Murray's corner to navigate down through the gearbox for the 296 GT3. It's your champion for season 10. It's Danny Zoutenbayer. What a performance. All year long, all season long. And he takes the season 10 crown. Congratulations to Danny Zoutenbayer. Well done to Dennis Penders. He's going to get 2nd in the drivers' standings, just in front of Steve Hall, who will take 3rd in the drivers' standings. But let's run you through the final race order of the season. Massimo Benedetti, thank you very much for your comments, Massimo. You've been outstanding today. It's race victory and driver of the day from me for him. Sebastian Berger, 97 seconds behind in 2nd place, the only other driver on the lead lap. Steve Hall is 3rd in the race and, by my calculations, 3rd in the Drivers' Championship. Well done to Steve. Good return to form today. Michael van der Waal, despite his slip and slide, is in 4th place. Done a great job. Danny Felix, excellent effort. Best result of the season for him in 5th. Our champion is 6th. He won't care about that one bit, will Danny Zoutenbayer. Dennis Penders will finish 2nd in the driver's standings and 7th in the race. Then it's Neil Wright, who had a few issues. Tony Manley, who had a few issues as well. Byford-Root is 10th, and Joe Warner, the last classified finisher, in 11th. Ross Harris, Davy Zoutenbayer, Rich Jarram, John Wells and Jeffrey Van Buren all retired from the race, sadly with accident damage. But that is it. That is it for season 10. That's it from me for this season. I'm sure you're all sad. I'm sad. But we will be back for season 11. I will be back for season 11 as well. Not for all the races, but I will be back commentating. Don't worry about that. For everyone who has been watching and for everyone who has watched this season, thank you so much. It's been really good to get comments from everybody, and it's been a fantastic championship to watch and commentate on. We've had so much action, so many different race winners, and it's been a really good advertisement for the championship to see so many different drivers having good battles out on circuit. I do fully believe that next season we'll be back above 20 car grids like we were earlier in the championship, to be fair, but life does happen, of course. But that is not a drawback in any way, shape or form. The drivers who take part in ACC Race Nation have been excellent all season long. It's been fraught with danger, it's been fraught with action, and it's been fraught with brilliance throughout. For the final time of Season 10, I've been Jack Millington, your commentator for ACC Race Nation in the GT3 series. And wherever you might be in the big wide world, have a good one, and we'll see you for Season 11.